In today's clip, I want to talk about one of the few new loves I've discovered in the last few years. I mean, besides my wifey, obviously, but this one definitely might kill me sooner rather than later. And it's Wagyu beef. And hey, I'm pretty sure it'll be worth it. Heyo, Zempak here. Another day, but a first after deciding I'll adhere to the greater American way and take federal holidays off from making clips too. Who knows, maybe one day I'll decide to take Hallmark holidays off too. It is, after all, my prerogative. So, if you're here for one reason or another, comment, like, and subscribe so I can keep talking to the great void that is the internet and somehow feel like I'm being productive. So, don't know about you, but I've been on this Wagyu train until relatively recently. Maybe it's because there was so much hype around Kobe and the subsequent larger category of Wagyu, and I'm just usually cynical of hypes. Or maybe it's because of relatively low availability outside of restaurants, and I simply don't like getting obsessed with an item that I can rarely find. But whatever the reason was, since I've moved away from New York City, I've somehow learned that Wagyu is literally one of the reasons why I feel so sorry for vegetarians, okay? There may be a lot of faux meat out there that's pretty accurate to the original, but I've never remotely had anything even 5% similar to Wagyu beef. So today I'm gonna try to really hard to describe the joy that comes with this wonderful creation of man, and how I got over some of my initial imagined objections. Okay, number one, on the hype. Well, honestly, there's no way around the hype except to try it, right? After all, this is some meat technology that, people have been working hard on over generations. And if nothing else, I should have given it a shot much earlier, all right? Now, these days, there's a good variety of Wagyu from all over the world, so don't get too stuck if you can. Just find the original gangster of Wagyu, which is Kobe, okay? The moment I was personally sold forever was at a Wagyu tasting at a local steakhouse in California, actually. I think what the sampler for the tasting involved was an American piece, and an Australian piece, and a Japanese piece of Wagyu. Now, if you know me, you know I do love gorging on some good stuff, and frankly, I thought a sampler might not be enough meat, right? After all, it's called a sampler, so I imagine how this would be like how a slider scales to a burger in terms of how this sampler steak would scale to a real steak. Yet, by the time that I had realized portion control would not be a problem, that was the time when I actually finished eating it, okay? Because if you eat it from least to most marbled Wagyu, by the time you get to the last piece, my God, I thought my brain was gonna have an aneurysm right then and there, okay? But in a good way, like your brain can't process the level of richness that it might want to immediately shut off just to cool down, okay? Honestly, I could only ingest it like a tiny bite at a time to really truly savor it. It is that good, and this wasn't even Kobe, to be honest. I might be scared of actual Kobe at this point, because I never want to be so used to such a high quality meat. This is like lifestyle inflation, but bovine inflation. I'm scared of those level of bovine inflation where what happens if I'm only interested in Kobe? That's why I don't want to try that, okay? Point number two, on its viability at home. So after that experience, my wifey got me some Wagyu steak from a Whole Foods, and my reaction was, of course, sculf, why shop at Whole Paycheck? And I can't believe we paid almost $30 for a steak. But once again, as per usual, I was proven wrong and she was totally right. I mean, this is just something we can buy at our local, I'll bet, high-end supermarket, right? Yes, it's definitely a treat. It's relatively expensive. By no means we're not buying Wagyu steak like every day or anything like that. But it's still way cheaper than Wagyu costs at any sort of restaurant, okay? But most importantly, this was one of the first homemade steaks that I've had that I actually dreamt about afterwards. I mean, I suppose it also really deepened the bond between wifey and I, because, it's hard not to love a lady who feeds me not just steak, but memorable steak. Like unforgettable steak. Oh boy. I better hold on to my lady, or else who's gonna make me this steak? Oh man, oh my god, it was just thinking about it. Oh, just makes my face like go, oh my god, it's so good. Number 3. Now, finally, on the actual availability, generally speaking. Okay, so overall, I think this problem has been solved now that we live in Texas. I mean, for a while we were going specifically to Whole Foods because we thought, oh, Whole Foods has better cuts of meat. But then I realized our local chain, that's called HEB in Texas, has just as much variety of Wagyu cuts as Whole Foods. Now, I'm going to assume that's because of the proximity to the cattle ranching as an industry, because I don't recall seeing these kind of cuts of meat back on the East Coast, right? But honestly, I could also be mistaken here because I really didn't do much cooking. Even less than 5 years ago, I didn't do much cooking compared to now. The point remains, we've tried like Wagyu burgers, Wagyu skirt steak, Wagyu every kind of real steak like ribeye, New York strip, porterhouse. Now the results can be somewhat uneven. I think maybe because we haven't figured out how to properly cook all the different cuts, right? Especially the ones that are non-steak. But I'd say generally speaking, the high fat content that Wagyu is known for really creates this kind of halo effect, for me anyway. Even the burgers, which conceptually made me wonder whether it would work, they turned out super well. I mean, we grilled it. Oh my god, just watching it burn in its own fat was just a wonderful experience, like visually and later taste-wise as well. And I think that was one of the few meals that I've actually seen my wifey almost pass out mid-dinner as opposed to immediately afterwards. I mean, I know, I'm using words like aneurysm or passing out as positives, and that's kind of weird, okay? But hey, people go skydiving for fun because it's a brush with death, right? That gives you some rush. We're too lazy for skydiving, or maybe we're too chicken. So we'd rather have our brush of death on our couch while chowing down on some delicious, delicious grub, like any real Olympic champions of indulgence. Or, real Americans. In the end, okay, I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything except to share my joy. Okay, I feel so lucky to be able to find this ingredient these days and in this place that I wouldn't have considered only a handful of years ago. And these days I want to concentrate on the things that I love more than anything else in the world. After all, isn't that the kind of better world that we all want to live in, surrounded by the things that brings us real joy? Let me know in the comments if you disagree or what it is that you love. In the meantime, feel free to check out some of my other clips on the corners above. Cheers.